Hello everyone, welcome back to the Betta Girl channel. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you guys all about Betta diet and what foods are best to feed them, what to watch out for, what to avoid. And this is coming from someone who just has a lot of experience keeping Bettas. I've kept them since I was about 10 years old. And these are just things I've learned along the way, along with my own research. But by all means, I'm not like a certified Betta keeper or anything like that. So if you disagree with anything, feel free to call me out in the comment section. I'm absolutely up for discussion on anything. This hobby has so many variables. So if there's any point where you feel like something isn't right, definitely feel free to bring it up. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. The first foods I wanted to talk about are dry foods, which is usually everyone's first choice when it comes to feeding your Betta fish. My thoughts on these, I don't feed them to my Bettas personally, but I think they can work. But I think there are things you need to be careful of when feeding them anything that is, dry, because Betta's digestive systems are very sensitive and they're very prone to digestive issues like constipation and things like that. So I'm just gonna let you know the things to look out for and things you can do to avoid any sort of swelling of the food in the stomach, which can then in turn sort of cause swim bladder issues from any sort of constipation and things like that. Okay, so going up first, we got these dry flakes. These are by Bug Bites, which are really good. They have a lot of nutrition. The only thing I find with the flakes is that they don't really mimic their natural food source, so they don't usually tend to be drawn to it. So I find that most Bettas will reject these, but if you happen to have a Betta that does, they are probably the best dry food to go for because, they'll kind of instantly absorb the water in the tank, so they won't expand in their stomachs. But as far as something like natural that mimics their natural food source, they're not really going to go for this as much, but it's definitely worth a shot. Now, second is a very common Betta fish food. These are the Fluval Bug Bites pellets. So these are the sinking ones. They tend to kind of sink, but there's very many different variations of these. And a lot of them, they kind of look like a little bug on the surface of the water. So they kind of mimic what they would naturally eat in the wild, which would be like, bugs or mosquito larvae or anything like that. Maybe not mosquito larvae, they're kind of long shaped, but any sort of small bug on the surface of the water. The only thing I have an issue with these pellets is that they're very dry and they're not really going to get a chance to absorb the water before they get into their stomach. So the pellet's going to expand a bit in their stomach, causing potential issues for swim bladder and buoyancy issues, which just means they might end up floating up to the surface or sinking. And if you've ever experienced that, that's what that is. So what I'd recommend if you do plan on using this food is to pre-soak it. So soak it in water, or better yet, this is a vitamin for your fish, and you can actually soak these in the vitamin so they're ingesting more vitamins, which is really going to help them get the full nutrition that they need. So I highly recommend this product. It's called Vita Chem or Vita Chem, Vita Chem, I think. So this is a great product to use if you're gonna use these. I'd use these in combination, but if you don't have this, no worries, just soak it in water before you feed your Betta, just to avoid any of those swim bladder issues. The second form of food I'm going to talk about is frozen. And I'm not going to bring it out because I don't want it to like melt all over me. But I feed my bettas a lot of frozen foods. So things like frozen daphnia, bloodworms, and brine shrimp. And if you can get baby brine shrimp, sometimes they'll accept those, but sometimes it'd be a little bit too small. Some bettas won't even accept the daphnia because it's really small, but I feed my bettas mainly a lot of daphnia. It's really great protein source, and it's very good at it's kind of like acts as a natural laxative. So it's not going to constipate them at all, and it's going to help them digest, if anything. So I feed them that a lot, and then a little less frequently, I'm going to feed them some bloodworms. I think the key to any betta diet is just a good variety and just to switch things out. Maybe you think they're being spoiled a bit, but it's really the best way to feed them. And then brine shrimp, you definitely don't want to exclusively feed brine shrimp because it doesn't have enough nutritional value for them. So brine shrimp's good, but feed it in combination with like daphnia or bloodworms. I recommend the three as a combination because they're great. Because daphnia, I definitely feed the most. Bloodworms is kind of like a treat. And then daphnia is just something to mix it up a little bit. So that's kind of what I do with the frozen foods. Also, I just wanted to talk about anything like plant matter, like a pea. A lot of people say if your betta is suffering from constipation, feed them a pea. Don't do it. It's great for like a goldfish because they can eat plant matter, but betta's digestive system is not designed for that, so that's actually going to make things worse for them. So definitely stay away from any plant matter. I've definitely seen people have bettas that eat like floating plants, like duckweed. If they're eating that, I wouldn't really take a big concern to it. It's not going to really do much to it, but definitely don't feed them plant matter intentionally, especially if they're already suffering from a digestive issue. It's just going to make it a whole lot worse. Okay, and last but not least, I want to talk about live foods because it's something I've recently got into and something I never thought I would actually do. But after having my Betta Hender breed and having to, get into the whole cultures and, hatching brine shrimp and microworms, I've really learned they're not that scary. They're actually very easy. And I want to talk about one in particular because a lot of the cultures that I keep are meant for baby fish, like the microworms, vinegar eels, brine shrimp. I've done all that. Brine shrimp are kind of too small for adults, especially if it's a domestic type betta. They're not really going to go for it. Not even my Embellus really goes for it. My Hendra, they go for it, but they're a little smaller than my Embellus. A domestic betta is bigger than all of those, so he'd probably not be too interested because they're just so small. But there is a live food that is really easy to culture and keep going, and that is grindle worms. So I really want to talk to you about grindle worms because they're a great nutritional source. They have a lot of vitamins and minerals and a lot of protein, which is what bettas love. So let's get into that. I wanted to show you guys my actual culture. So these are the grindle worms. They look really kind of gross, but I basically just have these things in here and then you put the food on top of it. So they go there and then you can basically just take these little things out, get a little thing of water and dip them in the water, and then get your little syringe and suck them up with the syringe, and I just shoot them into the tank and they go nuts over it. And they're quite they can vary in size. You can get smaller ones and you can get bigger ones, but they're big enough that your betta is definitely going to see them, so that's great. And they're just in you can use a lot of different sort of substrates. I'm using a cocoa core. But yeah, just try and make sure it's like an organic substrate. I've seen people use potting mix, and I just feed them once a day with old fish flakes. Like, these are just some regular fish flakes, and I just put a bunch on top, and that just keeps them going, keeps them breeding. And you just want to make sure the soil stays moist, and if it gets too wet, you can add more soil. But basically just keeping it moist, but obviously not like sopping wet. And it's been going great, and they're super easy to harvest. If you've ever tried hatching brine shrimp, it's such a pain and I hate it. I hate the whole setup, but these are a dream. I can just like cover it up, put it anywhere storage wise, and yeah, just like keep it like this under somewhere you don't see, and take it out whenever I want to feed my fish. And it feeds a lot of fish because these little worms breed like crazy. Now that we've talked about all of the different kinds of foods, let's talk a little bit more about how much we're feeding. So how frequently, how much, how long can bettas go without eating food? So typically I feed my bettas like once or twice a day. If it's my Hendra tank, I feed 2 to 3 times a day just because there's multiple fish in there. So that's going to obviously increase the amount I'm going to want to feed. If it's just a singular betta and you're feeding them just exclusively them, I just feed that betta itself and then rotate the foods depending on which day. So one day I'm going to feed like Daphnia, and the next day I'm going to feed some brine shrimp, Daphnia again, and then maybe a bloodworm once a week. Not a bloodworm, but maybe like 4 or 5 bloodworms, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's sort of how I would work with that. If you're feeding just dry food, you can just feed them, I would say probably like 2 to 3 pellets is really enough, just once a day. It's actually crazy how full I find. This is just from my experience, and if you disagree, let me know. But I found, you know, like probably, I'm trying to think back to when I've actually fed my fish pellets, because it's been a while, so I'm actually trying to think about it. I think I probably fed like 3 to 5 pellets once a day. And yeah, if you're just exclusively feeding that, I definitely recommend the little vitamin supplement that you can soak it in, and that's really just going to help get those extra nutrients and help with any bloating issues that the dry food might cause them. So yeah, I hope this covers everything. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. Oh, fasting. Let's talk about that. So usually I try to fast my fish once a week. Not really for my Hendra, because I have other fish in there that probably wouldn't appreciate it. And they're on a pretty good diet anyway, so I feel like I don't really need to, but I do try to fast my Betta and Bellas. And if it's any like sort of domestic Betta, I would also fast them once a day, not once a day, once per week. So that just gives them sort of time to digest whatever's left over in their stomach, and it just really ensures any sort of digestive issues. Next day you can feed some Daphnia to be sure everything got through, and then, you know, continue on with your regular feeding schedule. So yeah, that's something I do recommend if you own a Betta, because it's just great for their digestive system. And they're in the wild, I think they probably would fast anyway, because they're in the wild and there probably isn't always food sources, especially in the dry season. It can be harder when they're breeding. If you didn't know, when bettas breed, they don't really eat. So that's also sort of like a fasting for them. Okay, so I think I've covered pretty much everything on this topic. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to answer any questions or concerns. What else? Yeah, I just feel like there's not really like an in-depth video like this on YouTube yet, so I was super happy to make something like this in hopes that it helps educate people a little bit more on sort of the complexities that bettas have with their digestive system, because, you know, swim bladder issues are very common with them. So if there's anything we can do to prevent them, like, why not take the extra precautions and do so? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely subscribe and help support me. Follow me on Instagram, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.